Hello everyone, this is part 4 of the video lecture on module 5 data communication. Module 5 we are discussing the synchronization and the error control aspects of data link layer. And synchronization, we all started with the synchronization problem and the two major schemes to handle the synchronization issue. That is asynchronous transmission and synchronous transmission. So we already covered asynchronous transmission, where the whole information we are dividing into different characters and we are adding special start and stop bit, and we saw the major problem, that is the overhead that is associated with asynchronous transmission. Now we will see an entirely different concept called synchronous transmission, where we are not breaking our information into different characters and all. Simply we will simply send any number of bits as a sender want to send, but we can break maybe at some bigger level, like instead of 8 bits you are breaking, you can break at some 1024 bits or some bigger value, okay, some kilobits or whatever it is. So the more details in when you are learning the different data link layer protocols like Ethernet and all, we will see how this frame is being fixed. So this is actually the scenario that we are practically, I mean, in our current network you can see that mostly they are following the synchronous transmission scheme, because asynchronous is there in the literature. So that is an experiment people started with. Then they found many issues. So definitely the first one, the overhead issue, because per character we are adding some 2 bits of for the synchronization purpose. So some 20% minimum overhead you can expect in synchronous transmission. That is actually going to waste the bandwidth, capacity, everything of our transition media. So better solution people are trying with, and that is how we have the synchronous transmission. So in synchronous transmission, a block of bits is transmitted in a steady stream without start and stop codes. So you are not going to break the block of information, large number of bits into different characters, and you are not going to add any start and stop code. Simply you are sending the block of information transmitted as a steady stream. The block may be many bits in length, but normally we have a boundary for a block, and that is being determined by the type of data link layer protocol which you are using, whether it is Ethernet, you may be heard such terms, token ring or token bus. Like that we have different local area network LAN protocols, and which we are using accordingly. The protocol is having certain limitation where it will be breaking your bits into different blocks, but anyway it is not like a small characters and all, it is some bigger stream, bigger number of bits. To prevent timing drift between the transmitter and the receiver, their clock must somehow be synchronized. But the same thing is what we started our discussion with. That means when you are sending long stream of bits, definitely that physical clock, some small drift will be there. Even that minute, maybe it is 0.0001% drift, but still it will lead to a problem when the number of bits are more. But now how we are going to solve it? Okay, so how we are achieving the synchronization? So that is the important part here. So for that, we are doing something. One solution is to provide a separate clock line between the transmitter and the receivers. You don't allow the receiver to have its own clock. Okay, simply we are avoiding the concept of receiver clock. So that definitely there is no drift issue and no synchronization issue at all. Now how the receiver will be in synchronization with the sender? By getting the clock information from the sender. Along with the data, the sender is sending the clock information, sender's clock information also to the receiver. By seeing the sender's clock information, the receiver is getting tuned with the sender's clock, and it will interpret the information. Okay, so that is the idea. So you are providing one more additional separate clock line between the transmitter and the receiver. Means, the transmitter and receiver is connected by our transition media, and transition media, one major part is consumed by our data, normal data that the sender want to communicate with the receiver, and some small portion of the transition media you can imagine like a clock line, okay, through which the sender is trying to communicate its clock information to the receiver also, and with that clock information the receiver is trying to synchronize with the sender and not with its on physical clock. Okay, so the clock information is being transmitted, so that is the thing, but it is not going to consume a bigger bandwidth and all, because clock just some pulse you have to send, indicate in the beginning of a clock. So something like that, you just imagine a signal where at the beginning of each clock with respect to the sender, the signal is just showing a high pulse, like that. It's not a binary digital information, something like this. So in transmitter or the receiver side, pulses the line regularly with one short pulse per bit time. That means bit time means the time taken to send a particular bit. That is small, but clock is even the clock width will be proportional to the bit time, right? Now you can initiate this clock either from the sender point of view or from the receiver point of view. See, you can imagine in both directions. Either the sender can select the clock and it can generate the data and it can inform that to the receiver, or the receiver can tell the sender, this is how my clock is set up, and no need to maintain a clock at the sender side. By looking at the clock pulses from the receiver side, the sender can send the information also. You can do it in both direction. Okay, so anyway, that clock pulses are coming. The other side, that is, if the sender is sending the clock pulse to the receiver side, the receiver is sending back the sender side, whatever it is. The other side uses these regular pulses as a clock. With that means only sender or the receiver, any one of them will be maintaining the actual physical clock, and that clock information will be communicated to the other party through some pulses which are getting active at the beginning of a signal. So hope you get that idea of a pulse. Means it is idle, and whenever the new clock is starting, it will just go high and it will immediately go down, just like that. It is not like a binary digital information that will consume very small bandwidth only. So that is the idea, but still it is an overhead, but it is not like the overhead that we saw in asynchronous communication. So this technique works well over short distances, but over long distances the clock pulses are subject to the same impairments as as a digital signal, and the timing errors can occur. So for small distances it is fine, but if you for long distance communication, if you are trusting this and you are sending this clock information like this on the way, just like the transmission impairments, how it is going to affect your actual communication, the same problem is being faced by the clock pulses also. They may be getting impaired, and accordingly the receiver may not get the correct clock information from the sender, or the sender may not get the correct clock information from the receiver if the length is you are communicating over longer distances. So shorter distance communication, it is okay. So typically what is happening in our local area network, we are using this scheme mainly in Ethernet and all. You can see it is following synchronous transmission, because that is meant for a small geographical area and the devices are somewhat closely connected, so they can communicate by means of this. So within a LAN you can follow this. So that is what is practically employed in our Ethernet communication and all. Okay, but for longer communication like the metropolitan area network or wide area network, in that level or within the backbone communication and all, you can try the asynchronous transmission, or you can tolerate this error in some way. Anyway, these two techniques are there. Suitably you have to opt depending on other constraints. So the other alternatives, see, this is very important in synchronous communication itself. Instead of communicating the clock directly to the receiver or the other party, you can achieve the sender can communicate the clock information to the receiver, but at this time you are not sending a separate clock. Instead, your encoding technique itself is containing the clock information. So this is very, very important, because I already told you the Ethernet and token ring, if you are looking at any synchronous local area network protocol, you can see that they are employing the synchronous transmission, but how they are implementing their synchronous transition, actually it is not by sending separate clock. Okay, so that is one method only, but in practical cases, as you already seen, if the distance is high and all, the information will be impaired, the clock information may lost, right? So that so we have a very good technique, that means in our encoding technique in itself, and so we are not going to use our NR reset L scheme, okay, for our, so that is a basic technique we already seen. But I think in which module we studied this in detail? Second module, I think, right? Encoding, third module, third module, third module we saw all these encoding techniques in detail, right? And that time we saw that this Manchester and differential Manchester scheme. So to understand this concept, if you have any doubt, you please go to that third module, I think, where we discussed this encoding technique, that Manchester and differential Manchester. Go there and understand that concept. Still, if you have any doubt, you can ask me when we are having the doubt clearing session. Okay, So that is the idea, because to explain how this Manchester encoding or differential Manchester encoding is achieving, is communicating the clock information to the receiver, I have to take that example everything. So that is why I hope you already studied this, then there is no problem. Otherwise you go there and understand how these things are working. So this Manchester encoding is what is being employed in Ethernet for achieving this synchronous transmission. Similarly, differential Manchester is more advanced, where means it's a special coding, means okay, and anyway, I'm also not remembering. You go there, differential coding, it's having some more means that differential itself is means the nearby bits are synchronized with respect to the previous bit, something like that. So that makes it differential Manchester encoding somewhat more advanced than the pure Manchester encoding scheme. So you understand both of these scheme and you will see. And this differential Manchester is what we are using in our token ring network and all. So this is how these practical Ethernet, local area network protocols are implementing synchronous transmission using some very good encoding techniques, just like this. So the other alternative is to embed the clock information in the digital signal which you are trying to communicate itself. So you are trying to communicate some information, don't send the clock as a separate clock line. Okay, simply you add this clock information along with the information which you want to communicate. So both will be encoded together using a proper encoding scheme. If you are looking at digital signal, this can be accomplished with the Manchester and differential Manchester encoding. So that makes them different from other simple technique like NR, I or L and other things. Okay. So that about so this last area you have to give some focus. You have to understand how it is achieving, how it is communicating the clock information to the receiver without using a separate clock pulse communication. Simply the encoding technique is done in such a way that is giving information. The clocking of the transmitter is being communicated through the along with the actual information. So a very good level of synchronization is possible here. So hope you understood how this synchronous transmission is achieved, is done. Now some more additional information I want to. So with this, so here in this slide, the concept is I tried to explain, but some more additional features of this synchronous transmission is what we are going to see now. So simply go through this. We have a concept of preamble and postamble. We already seen when it comes to asynchronous communication with each and every character, some start and stop bit are adding. But here instead of a particular character, we will be sending a block of bits, and that for that entire block of bits we may add some special pattern at the beginning and end. That is what is called a preamble and postamble. So with the synchronous transition, there is another level of synchronization other than the clock synchronization, which is achieved with a separate clock line or with a specific intelligent encoding technique. One level of synchronization is achieved. Now we are trying to make one more level of synchronization. That means by seeing this special pattern which is added at the beginning of the block, the receiver can understand that yes, a new communication started, something like that, and where it is to be end. So for that next level of synchronization, that is to allow the receiver to determine the beginning and end of a block of data which is of a larger number of bits. We are using some special pattern. So every block is now beginning with a special pattern called a preamble bit pattern, and generally ends with something called a postamble bit pattern. In addition, other bits are added to the block that convey the control information used in the data link control procedures. And you don't worry about this control bit information, that we will see much when we are studying a particular protocol. So that is something protocol to protocol varying. If you are looking at Ethernet, this control information will be something. Many things are there in this control information. They are trying to say some error detection code like CRC and all Ethernet is using. So altogether for other purposes, that is for flow control, error control, like that many other things these protocols has to handle. For that some special additional bits it is supposed to append with each and every block of information is what called the control information. You don't worry about it. In addition to the start special pattern at the beginning and end of a block, we have some more special bit patterns just to convey give some control information to the receiver. And those things right now you just understand like control information and what is this, what is the significance of each and every control bit. Those things we will see in our higher semester when we are learning a particular protocol in detail. So the data plus the preamble, postamble, and other this kind of control information is together called a frame now. So in our asynchronous transition, we called just a character of 8 bits with some parity if there, and start and stop bit. That 10 bit or some smaller number of bits as a frame. But here, when it comes to synchronous transmission, it is frame is a more general terminology where a frame will be containing the actual block of information which the sender want to communicate with the receiver, along with some special pattern called the preamble added at the beginning of the block and postamble added at the end of the block with some additional control information. Together we call as a frame. Okay. So the concept of frame is different. So all those things you have to note down. Start bit, stop bit. Now it changed to preamble, postamble. Instead of 5 to 8 bits, now it changed to some large number of bits. So like that you should be able to differentiate these two things, because most of the time I saw your repeated question as differentiate between synchronous and asynchronous transition. So just highlight the points only. No need to write like this. Okay. So if the question is like differentiating, you have to differentiate. You are not supposed to explain like this. Okay. Particularly if they are asking synchronous transition, then you can explain in this way. But differentiating means you have to highlight the points that you have to keep in mind. So the exact format of the frame depends on which data link control procedure is being used. So that is what I told. So how the frame is exactly looking, what about the control information, everything that depends on the actual data link layer protocol which you are using, and that we will see in our higher semester course. So synchronous frame format, just a rough format is given, and more details that depends on the particular protocol which you are using. So following figure shows in general the typical frame format for a synchronous transmission. The typical block of some large number of bits you can see as a data field, starting with an 8-bit preamble flag and 8-bit postamble flag with the control information. Control information you can append at the beginning, end, or at the end depending on the type of protocol you are using. Okay, the number of bits, everything will vary. So typically the frame starts with the preamble called a flag, which is typically 8 bits. But if you are looking at Ethernet and all, it is not 8 bit, it is something more. That is specifically fixed for that protocol. If you are looking at some other protocol, depending on their convenience, their efficiency, everything, they will be fixing some other number of bits and their meaning, everything. So the same flag is being used as a postamble also typically, but that may also vary. The receiver looks for the occurrence of a flag pattern to signal the start of a frame. So this is as long the receiver will be simply looking at the transition media for a special pattern that is already communicated, and that pattern is now the beginning of a new frame. So whenever the receiver is getting that special 8-bit say preamble flag indicating the beginning of a new frame, now it will start reading the rest of the information. So that is the control information containing data link layer control protocol related control information, followed by the actual data field, which is of variable length for most of the protocol. And if it is variable length, then there will be an additional length field also, that is also coming as part of the control field. That length field will be containing some value indicating how many what is the length of the data field, so where you have to stop your reading, something like that, or a special end pattern, and more control fields. And finally the same flag is being repeated. Okay, and what about the overhead here? The first thing, the clock overhead is there, because in addition to the data you have to communicate the clock information also. But see, if you are using Manchester or differential Manchester encoding, actually that clock overhead is completely eliminated, because you are not sending any extra information. Simply in the encoding scheme which is being used for the actual data, you are adding the clock information also without wasting any space. You are making your encoding scheme intelligently in such a way that will convey the clock information also to the receiver. Okay, so clock related, the communication of the clock, don't think it as an overhead. That is being solved by using efficient encoding technique like Manchester and differential Manchester. But still we have some overhead, right? That means the entire block, now we added some preamble and postamble for a second level of synchronization. That may lead to what called overhead, but still that is very small value we will see. If you are looking at a sizable block of data with many bits, synchronous transition is far more efficient than asynchronous. In asynchronous, we already seen a very basic case where there is 20% overhead. Now we will see what could be the overhead percentage if we are taking synchronous transition by taking an example. The asynchronous transmission requires 20% at least minimum overhead, or it will be more also depending on the other parameters, how many bits you are encoding and all. The control information preamble and postamble in synchronous transition are typically less than 100 bits only. That means for a block as a whole, depending on the size of the block, if you look at the preamble, that is like some 8 bits, postamble some 8 bits, 8 plus 8 16 bits. If you are making it larger also accordingly, control information all together is the overhead for a block of information. That will be typically less than 100 bits only. 100 is a very large boundary for that. Okay. Now, one of the more specifically, if you are taking an example, the data link layer protocol, that is the HDLC, high level data link control protocol. You don't need to learn this in detail and all if it is not mentioned in your syllabus, but simply you understand it as an example here. For that purpose only I am quoting this HDLC, because I taken from the textbook. And if you are looking at the HDLC particularly, there is 48 bits of control, preamble and postamble. So typically for any protocol it will be less than 100 bits, or maybe some value near to 100 bits. HDLC particularly it is only 48, and that 48 definitely for 8 bit preamble, 8 bit postamble and some other control information, all together it is 48 bits. Now suppose your block is containing 1000 characters as an example. In our asynchronous transition, each character is a block. Now it is not like that. We are collecting sequence of bits together as a block. For example, if it is 1000 character block we are considering. Now every frame is consists of 48 bits of overhead. Right. So I am getting some doubt here. So what they meant like this? Sorry. Our block of data is 1000 character, right? 1000 character. Now, what is one character? One character is typically 8 bits. So totally, the block is containing 1000 character. That is 1000 into 8, 8000 bits of data. Now, for this entire block as a whole, we have just 48 bit as additional for the preamble, postamble, and overhead information together. So for this entire 8000 bits of data, we are adding just 48 bit as our metadata as additional information. So totally now we are having 8048 bits. Out of this 8048 bits, just 48 bit is wastage. Remaining 8000 bits are useful. So if you are taking the overhead, what is the percentage of overhead? It will be 48 divided by 8048 into 100. That many percentage. That is just 0.6 percentage. You can calculate that value for 0.6 percent. See, in place of 20 percentage of overhead, now we are having only 0.6 percentage overhead. So that makes synchronous transmission much more efficient than the asynchronous transmission. Okay. So that is achieved by communicating the clock information of sender or the receiver to the other party. Typically the clock information is sender to the receiver. For that purpose you can either use separate clock pulse line, or you can embed the clock information along with the data which you are trying to communicate. So that is what is happening in the Manchester and the differential Manchester technique. Okay, so hope this is very clear for you. So this is the benefit we are getting. We are reducing the overhead to a very, very small value. Okay, and without any simply what we are compromising is we are using a very good encoding technique. The encoding algorithm may be somewhat complex, not a simple algorithm like NRZ, but still we are getting all these benefits. So this is what we are practically using. Okay. With this wind up discussion on synchronous transmission. So we covered synchronous and asynchronous transmission. At the end, the outcome is like you should be able to compare these two. Okay. Now in the subsequent parts, we will move on to the error control part, how we are handling the errors in a typical communication, what are the types of errors, and detection as well as the correction schemes we will see in detail. Okay, thank you.